Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great afternoon, and we have plenty of Browns to talk about. Draft just a couple of days away. A little later in the show, Ashley Bastock from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer will join us. We'll talk plenty of Browns. We begin by talking plenty of Browns. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as brownzone.com online. Scott, let's take a look at this. Pro Football Focus has put up the projected starting lineups for every team. Here's what the Browns starting lineup looks like. Offense on the left side of the screen, defense on the right side of the screen. You look at it, and I don't know about you, but there's some things that jump out as needing some upgrades on this. When you look at those position groups and the projected starters as they stand now, granted, free agency still not done, draft still not done. What area to you says, boy, the Browns need to work on this portion of the team?
Yeah, I think I'd start with the D-line. You know, Taven Bryan was a disappointment with the Jaguars. First-round pick, really didn't live up to that at all. It's done, in Jacksonville 4 years in. Jordan Elliott, I know the Browns have high hopes for him. He was a third-round pick a couple years ago. Has not done a ton in those 2 years. And then they have Chase Winovich is that second end opposite Myles Garrett. He seems more like a situational pass rusher to me. Maybe right now it would be Stephen Weatherly, who they signed a week ago, is your kind of first down guy because he's more of a run stopper. He's a bigger guy than Winovich. But that's the spot, right? You need a number two end. And I would like to see the Browns, if you're a Browns fan, add a real big piece to that interior. And then you can have Bryan and Elliott and Togiai kind of work around that number one defensive tackle.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind, if you plan on playing Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at linebacker, you got to keep guys off of him because if you get a lineman on him, it negates his biggest asset, which is his speed and his quickness and ability to run sideline to sideline.
Yeah, that's totally right. Now, that starting lineup had Taki as the number two linebacker, and I think it would be Jacob Phillips. It'd be Phillips and JOK, and then Taki is probably the third guy. And then you have Anthony Walker Jr. Somewhere in that mix. Maybe he's your fourth guy. But you're right. And we talk so much about covering the pass, right? And that's why you have a nickelback, and that's why traded up to get JOK, because he can cover and he can run sideline to sideline. But in order to be able to, like they say, in order to be able to rush the quarterback or cover, you got to stop the run first. So there is still importance to the D tackle position. I don't know if the Browns think it's worthy enough to draft the guy there at number 44 or to pay big bucks in free agency, but there is a need. You have to be able to stop the run in the interior to make everything else even possible.
And you mentioned guys like Elliott and Togiai. Those are draft picks the last couple of years. What areas do you think are kind of saying, boy, we need a guy that's been there and done that, veteran presence? What area would you like to see addressed in the third wave, or whatever wave you want to call it, of free agency?
I do think D tackle would be that number one spot, because there's not a guy that's been nearly as successful or had a career, the experience, the resume, like a Malik Jackson a year ago, right? He brought Super Bowl experience. Taven Bryan doesn't have that, and he's the most experienced guy among that front. Sheldon Day's in the mix too. And I know the Browns like him and he has some position flexibility, but, he's not a starter. He's the kind of guy, they cut him multiple times last year because they knew he would clear waivers and be able to come back. So I think right there, if you get a guy like Akeem Hicks, all of a sudden the depth chart seems a lot stronger, and maybe you could say the same if you drafted a D tackle at number 44, you'd feel better about it. But I like the idea of experience there. And then maybe receiver too. It's a young group outside of Amari Cooper. You do have Jakeem Grant, whether he would be the number 3 receiver, Anthony Schwartz would be the 3 receiver. Ideally, I think you slide in a guy at the number 2 receiver spot and then bump all those other guys down a notch.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. All right, having said all that, do you think it's still likely possible, gut feeling, about Jadeveon Clowney and Jarvis Landry re-signing with the Browns? Those two would go a long way towards building out a couple of those areas of need.
Yeah, it really would. I think then if you sign those two guys, it would free up Andrew Berry to do whatever he wanted. it really throughout the whole draft. Maybe you have to get a D tackle at some point, and a kicker down the road. But at 44, 78, 99, I think he could really be best player available if you wanted to do that. Clowney is so hard to figure. I would think he comes back, but I don't know if I feel better than 50-50, about that, just because he's a different kind of guy. I know he likes warm weather. He chases the last dollar, which is his right to do, but I don't know if the Browns are willing to pay that last dollar. Maybe he wants a 2-year deal and the Browns only want to give a 1-year deal. So I think there's still a chance he comes back, but I don't know if you can count on that if you're Andrew Berry. And then Jarvis Landry, I know the door hasn't been closed, but I'm not as optimistic about Landry. I just think it's hard when he was due $15 million and the Browns cut him, and he's not going to make $15 million here or anywhere. I think that's tough to accept, returning to the same place that said you're not worth that kind of money, even though your contract said you were going to get that kind of money. So I wouldn't rule it out, but it doesn't seem a probability to me right now.
That's very similar to Sheldon Richardson a little bit ago with the Browns trying to bring him back as well.
Exactly right. It's the same principle. The Browns cut him and then offered him more money, and he said, no, I'm going to go take less money in Minnesota. So it's, there's a little bit of ego involved, and I completely understand that if you're the player when, the team, the Browns could have cut them, right? They have salary cap space, and they have cash. They've been willing to spend it on other people, and they deem Jarvis Landry not worth it. And that might be the right move from a football perspective. But if you're Jarvis Landry, there'd have to be some serious fence mending.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really does. We found this really interesting. So Super Bowl odds have come out. This is from the Resorts World Sportsbook. Favorites are the Bills at plus 700. Then you got Buccaneers 750, Packers and Chiefs plus 1,000, Rams 1,100, 49ers 13. Browns are the seventh most best odds at plus 1,400. And in the last 2 days, the Browns have moved from plus 2,000 to plus 1,400. And if you take it a step further, they're the third highest odds, third best odds from the AFC. Only the Bills and the Chiefs ahead of them. What do you make of that, Scott? It's just, and again, the folks in Vegas, they didn't build all those glitzy buildings by being wrong, and it has moved substantially towards the Browns being more of a Super Bowl threat in the last 2 days.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had a buddy text me that this morning. It's all speculation, right? But it feels like somebody in Vegas thinks, or one of the big gamblers who, they move the line as well, don't think Deshaun Watson's going to be suspended for much of the year, right? That's the only way I can read that, because so much of the lines are about quarterbacks, right? We see it on a weekly basis. If a quarterback misses a game, the line changes by points. If the best player on your team outside of quarterback misses a game, it might not move, so that just shows you the importance of quarterback. And I think it'd be the same thing here. If Myles Garrett got hurt, it'd be terrible. I don't know if the Browns' odds would change. But if Deshaun Watson got hurt for the year or was suspended for a year, the odds would change incredibly. So I feel like it's Deshaun Watson related, and maybe the thought is that if he gets suspended, maybe it won't happen until 2023, or if it happens this year, it won't be for a substantial length of time that would affect the Browns' playoff chances and Super Bowl odds, which is interesting because the last time I looked, they had the same odds to win the division as Cincinnati and Baltimore, and now they're obviously more of a favorite to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the thing about the quarterback to keep in mind for folks that are watching, touches the ball every play. That's the only guy you can say that about. He is guaranteed of having the ball in his hands to start every play. All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the way contracts are structured in the NFL.
Hi, this is Rico. I'm just calling in to find out what guaranteed contracts are for, in regards to, like, if a player has 1 year left on his contract, but it's non-guaranteed money, what does that ultimately mean? Does the team still have to pay him that full salary or not? Thank you. Go Browns.
All right, Scott, I'll let you take the first crack at this.
Yeah, it means if he's on the team, then he gets paid that money. But if he's cut before the season, like take J.C. Tretter for an example, he was due, I want to say $9 million in 2022. It wasn't guaranteed. The Browns cut him, and now they don't have to pay him $9 million. It's that simple. So there's few, and Deshaun Watson might actually be the only one, contracts that are fully guaranteed for the whole length of the contract. Everybody else, the first 2 or 3 years are guaranteed, and then they're not after that. And then that's when you look at salary cap casualties, guys that have the possibility to be cut. In the last year of 99% of the contracts in the league for sure are not guaranteed, which is why Deshaun Watson's $230 million 5-year fully guaranteed deal raised so many eyebrows.
And the other thing about the guaranteed money is once you cut them, that comes off the salary cap, and you have that money to kind of funnel back into your roster as you build it out. And that's kind of what happened with J.C. Tretter. You use Tretter as an example. That kind of went towards building out this year's roster. Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We're going to continue talking Browns. We'll look at the draft, some guys that the Browns could call their name at 44. We'll also hear about a couple of them. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. First round of the NFL draft is Thursday. Browns scheduled to make their pick on Friday, round 2 at number 44. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Can read him online on brownzone.com. Scott, just a gut feeling. What do you think, what position do you think the Browns take with that first pick, be it if they trade up or trade back? Where do you think they go with their first pick in this year's draft?
Yeah, I'm going to go D-end. We talked a lot about it last segment. And I just think that the receiver class is deeper and you can get a quality receiver. It's 78. And I don't know if I feel the same way about defensive end. So I think those are probably the two likeliest positions to go 1-2. And because of that, I would go D-end first and receiver second.
Yeah, I've kind of flipped on that. I'm with you. I think D-end, D-tackle, if one of those big guys is still there, but along the defensive line. And I wouldn't have said that when we started this process after the season ended. One of the wide receivers that has been linked to the Browns some is Sky Moore, his head coach at Western Michigan. Tim Lester talked about what he has seen from Sky Moore in his time at Western Michigan.
I tell people all the time, he has been a pro since he's been here. He's probably the most impressive freshman I've ever seen in that he went about his business, had fun doing it, worked hard. I mean, we gave him number 24. I mean, he was a true freshman. We didn't know if he's going to play DB or wide out. We put him at 24. He never changed his number. He didn't care. He's like, Coach, 24 is my number. I'm gonna make 24 a good number. And it speaks to the type of person he is. and his work ethic. And I think he's going to have a huge amount of success at the next level. The big thing last year was speed, overall top end speed. He was quick. He's 195. He's powerful. He was great off the jam. That was between his first and second year. I said, hey, we need to work at the line of scrimmage, and bam, he did it. And then between year 2 and year 3, it was like, hey, when these scouts look at you, we're going to have to get that top end speed going. I know you can go from 0 to 100 quick, but will you be able to produce that time? At that point, he was producing low 4.5s, maybe a high 4.4. But I said, really, we need to get you to have more explosive plays. He's definitely a guy you want on third down with people draped all over him. Throw it in his area, he'll get it. But our big thing going into this year was splash plays, pull away from people. And he went to the lab and did what he always does and had a ton of huge splash plays, big long gains that he hadn't really had in his first 2 years.
Scott, I know you wrote an article about Sky Moore. Take us through that and what you found out with him.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Lester, and I was fascinated by that number anecdote. The fact that he's 24, because when you turn on the highlight film, it's tough to find him. I mean, he's lined up as a receiver, but 24 just seems weird, right? Especially for the team's best receiver. And that shows where he came from, right? They didn't know he was going to be a receiver. They thought he'd probably play cornerback. Switched to receiver before his freshman year, which he'd never played before. He was a corner and quarter back in high school. And then has no ego where he felt like he needed to get a number in the 80s or a number in the single digits. And I think that says a lot about him. Lester raved about his work ethic, how he got better at everything that he told him to each year. Highly productive. The only knock is he's not ideal size, but he's got long arms and he had the biggest hands of anybody at the combine. So I really like him. I think he fits with what the Browns are looking for. I want to say it was Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network. I asked about possibilities at 44 just last week, and he said Sky Moore is the closest thing to Jarvis Landry in this draft. So obviously the Browns value those qualities, and he could slide right into the scheme. So I think he's certainly someone to consider, that the Browns will consider at 44.
Yeah, you mentioned somebody in the same breath with Jarvis Landry, you get Browns fans' attention without question. Another guy that kind of is linked to the Browns at 44, defensive tackle from the University of Connecticut. Let's take a look at Travis Jones, big-bodied guy, and you'll see him in the middle of this lineup. This one against Purdue. So he's just kind of walking everybody back and plays off the block. Where's number 57? Plays defensive tackle, 57 in white. This one's kind of interesting. Gets blocked all over the place. Somehow finds a way to make the tackle. Scott, you also have written an article about Travis Jones and how he could be the perfect fit. Take us through your thoughts on Travis Jones. A little bit more of this, too, while you're talking.
Yeah, I mean, we've addressed that they need another D tackle, and I think he fits the mold. Now, Andrew Berry in his 2 years in charge has not spent a lot of assets and resources on that position, right? They did not re-sign Larry Ogunjobi. They let him walk. Malik Jackson was a one-year deal. Malik McDowell had come off the scrap heap. Jordan Elliott's probably the biggest resource they've had, and he was a third-round pick. But, if you find the right guy, I think Andrew Berry might be willing to change that. At number 44, I don't think they would draft a guy early, first round if they were still 13. But at number 44, I think that's possible. Now, they would want that guy to have a little bit of pass rush, right? He can't just be a run-stuffing nose tackle. That's just not valuable enough, I think, for a lot of teams in today's NFL. But Jones has some. I think he had 5.5 sacks in his final year at UConn. At the Senior Bowl, he dominated. That's really where he popped for a lot of scouts because, UConn doesn't play a big-time schedule, although they played Clemson, and he showed up against Clemson. So, I think he's an interesting prospect, and if the Browns were convinced that he can rush the passer enough, not that you leave him on the field on third down, but on first or second down, if it's a pass that he can push the pocket. And I talked to his defensive coordinator, Lou Spanos, who'd been in the NFL a long time with the Steelers, and he thinks he can do that. And he thinks, you mentioned JOK earlier, he thinks he's a linebacker's best friend because he will occupy so many bodies up front against the run. So I would not rule out a D tackle, and I would not rule out Travis Jones because he's right in that area when you start forecasting who could be around at 44.
Yeah, and again, we saw the size and the quickness to get a little bit penetration. And, yeah, you saw him occupying blockers and still getting a hold of ball carriers. I'm intrigued. You question, UConn, who they're playing week in and week out is about the only question that you would have. All right, this is from Pro Football Focus. Let's run through a couple of these. It's three biggest needs. This is a draft preview. Defensive interior line, and they go with early fit and late fit for the Browns. You've got Logan Hall as the interior defensive guy from Houston. Jaden Peavy is the late fit. Pascal from Kentucky is the early fit. Wright as the late fit. From UAB, that's on the edge rusher. And then wide receiver Tolbert from South Alabama and Johnson from Tulsa, early and late fit at wide receiver. When you look at that, Logan Hall, Scott's another guy that from Houston has kind of been tied to the Browns. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I love the size. He's like 6'6", 283. To me, he's a question of where does he fit? Because Dane Brugler from The Athletic has him listed under the edge rushers, I believe. And you see him if you look at defensive end. Now, sometimes the end is a 3-4 D end, but a 4-3 tackle. That line gets a little blurry sometimes. But I think the Browns are a team and a coaching staff that could take him and say, okay, maybe he's the end on first down, and he's that run-stopping guy opposite Myles Garrett. And then on second and third down, you slide him inside, and he can rush from the interior. I think there's legitimate pass rush flexibility with Logan Hall, which is why I think he's really intriguing. Because I don't know, maybe he could get bigger, but at 283, at 6'6", he's not a Travis Jones, right? He doesn't occupy blockers. He's not a kind of lower his body and just sit in the middle. That's not the player he is. So I think they could do stuff with him though from a versatility standpoint. Pascal's interesting. 44 might be a little high for that. I don't know if he gets to 78. There's a lot of people that like him and have seen him connected with the Browns. Again, I think he's a guy you like that size, and it's so interesting. You look at those names, the guys, the early, you go, okay, I really like qualities. The late fits, you go, yeah, well, this is a problem. This is a problem. Well, that's what happens when you start looking at 6th and 7th rounders. There's more things to pick at.
Yeah, and the other thing is you're looking for specific skills that you can utilize late in and the Browns have been very good with that, in finding guys that have specific fits for their scheme, at least the last couple of years. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we will take a look at Baker Mayfield, some landing spots, and some more news about Baker Mayfield, where he may end up. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Thanks for buying a fishing license. I want you to picture all the great things this simple purchase does. Like building public boat ramps, keeping local waters clean, and maintaining a healthy fish population.
What's Mom doing?
When you buy a fishing license, you do a lot. Every dollar protects and maintains your local waterways for future generations to enjoy. Visit takemefishing.org.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield.
Hello, I want to make a comment about Baker Mayfield and all this trade rumors and everything. If you think about it, the Cleveland Browns have been a surrogate parent for the NFL for Baker Mayfield. Why would they want to put him up for adoption for nothing? Surrogate parents get paid money just to carry him. But put him up for adoption, you're giving him away for free. That's all I have to say.
Let's welcome Scott Petrak back in. And Scott, that's kind of an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that metaphor before. The problem is it's not like kids. You can only have one starting quarterback, and the Browns have theirs, and that's just the end of Baker Mayfield here. There's no way he's going to be a backup here. If that was the hope of the Browns, they needed to handle this situation completely differently, and I don't think Baker would have ever been satisfied coming in as the clear number 2 to Deshaun Watson or anyone. So, I know that they're not going to get back what everyone wants them to get back in a trade. I know they're not going to get back what they thought they might get in a trade a month ago or 6 weeks ago, but that's the reality. And now it's just try to find the best deal they can and get Baker out of here, because I think it'd be better for everybody involved once this situation's resolved.
All right. Along those lines, possible suitors for Baker Mayfield. This is from Joe Banner, the 33rdteam.com. So former NFL executive Joe Banner. Likely suitors, Seahawks and Panthers. You see the rationale. We've heard those names. You got Drew Lock, Geno Smith, and Sam Darnold, respectively. Then under the radar suitors listed by Banner, Steelers, Falcons, and Texans. Now, they did sign Mariota. The Falcons signed Mariota to that deal. They have Mitchell Trubisky with Pittsburgh. And the Texans, did they just want the extra first-round pick from the deal for Deshaun Watson? So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I still think Carolina, I know Banner didn't buy in completely, but that still feels like, to me, the most logical landing spot if they don't take a quarterback at number 6 on Thursday night. They don't draft again. I think it's in the 4th or 5th round. They have Sam Darnold. I don't know if you coach Matt Rule, how you go in thinking Sam Darnold's your guy when your job's on the line. And, I don't know. I mean, I think Baker's better than Sam Darnold. He's played better than Sam Darnold. I think you would want to go do that if you're Carolina. So that's what I kind of forecast is happening if Carolina doesn't take a quarterback at 6. Then they trade for Baker Mayfield. I don't think the Browns get a ton back, but at least it gets done. Seattle, again, you think Baker's going to be able to start somewhere. And it's Carolina and Seattle, feel the two most likely. Houston, feels like they still like Davis Mills. They want to give him a chance. And then the other options are kind of like backup options, right? Houston could have had Baker by now. Atlanta could have had Baker by now. So that's why I think Carolina and then Seattle make the most sense, just because they don't have that number 1 starter locked in.
Along those lines, Josina Anderson, within the past 45 minutes to an hour, tweeted this out. League sources on Baker Mayfield. At this time, Seahawks still don't sound overly eager for dealing for this quarterback at that salary because they feel Cleveland has to eventually move him. So it's still worth monitoring. And that's kind of what we were alluding to right now. It's kind of high stakes. It's $19 million poker for Andrew Berry.
Right. I mean, that's, these teams say, okay, why would we give up this? Or why would we pay the $19 million when there's not a whole lot of leverage that the Browns have? And, I don't know if the Browns could have done better with this, but once you have Deshaun Watson, then you lose your leverage. And there was a small window to get Deshaun Watson. So I think Andrew Berry's trying to resist and he's trying to hold out and hope there's a better market. But I think he's going to have to kind of bite the bullet and eat whatever number that is for Baker Mayfield, whether it's $9 million or $10 million or $12 million, whatever that number is. And then probably the more money you're willing to spend and take on for Baker's salary, the better draft pick you can get back. So you're kind of buying a draft pick and then you're getting rid of Baker in return, and you're probably only going to get maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick, a conditional mid-round pick, which doesn't seem like nearly enough for a number 1 overall draft pick, but that's just where the Browns are right now.
Yeah, and again, I think that kind of speaks to the fact that the Browns were surprised that Deshaun Watson agreed to be traded here. I think it caught them a little off guard, and they kind of needed to move along with that and not worry about what they were doing with Baker Mayfield. Well, yesterday we heard from Dan Orlovsky, ESPN's Get Up, about thinking Baker Mayfield would be the steal of the draft at the end of the draft. Mike Tannenbaum, also from ESPN's Get Up today, different take on that.
Absolutely not. Maybe for 1 year, if you're Carolina and you're Matt Rule, maybe to save your job. But Baker Mayfield fundamentally has limits on his game. He's short by NFL standards, and he came out running a 4.85, and because of that, he's been hurt before, and while I hope it doesn't happen, he could get hurt again because he can't outrun good NFL defensive linemen. Also, when you think about the money, which is part of the equation, take this into context, as Hembo reminded me. If the Pittsburgh Steelers draft a quarterback, Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, at the 20th pick, Greeny, they're going to guarantee $14 million for 4 years. Someone, if they take the entire contract, would guarantee Baker Mayfield $18 million for one. So I don't see it as the steal of the draft, and I think Cleveland's going to be sitting here probably eating, if not all, most of his contract.
And again, Scott, it goes around and around. Important to note, though, Baker Mayfield ended up getting hurt not because he couldn't outrun defensive players, but because he tried to tackle them.
Yeah. I thought Baker's athleticism has been fine. You know, he's not Lamar Jackson or, Patrick Mahomes or Malik Willis, but he made plays with his feet. You know, you can't run him. He's not Deshaun Watson, but I don't think that was the issue. His height was an issue at times. There's no doubt. I get the differing opinions, right? Dan Orlovsky's point is that Baker's a better quarterback than anybody coming out in this draft. And if you really believe that, then trading mid-round or low-round pick for Baker makes sense. But I also agree with Tannenbaum that, I just think we've talked about this a billion times, Dave. I just think Baker's like an average quarterback, right? He's like 18 or 20 or 22 in the league rankings. And if you feel that way, do you really want to invest a lot in him? Now, I think you can make the argument that, hey, there is a legitimate upside because he was a number one overall pick. He's won a playoff game, all those things that the Baker supporters point to, and there's some legitimacy there. But I also think you look and go, well, why were the Browns in such a hurry to get rid of him? And it's because they didn't think he could compete at the same level as the Pat Mahomes and the Justin Herbert and the Joe Burrows. And whatever team is looking for a quarterback has to have that same thought process go through their mind.
Yeah, I mean, those are all very fair points. That's why it'll be really interesting to see exactly how the whole Baker Mayfield thing plays out. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason with a question about late-round NFL draft picks. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about late-round picks in the NFL draft.
Hi, guys. I saw on the internet yesterday where Bill Belichick traded a 5th-round pick to the Texans for 3 6ths and a 7th. Does this mean this draft is a lot deeper than we thought? Maybe we should take our later picks a lot more seriously? Thank you for listening.
All right, as always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. And Scott, I don't think it has anything to do with the depth of the draft and just your opinion. Late round picks, you can find skills, but there are holes in their game. That's why they go in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of think the caller's point is interesting too. I don't know why you make that trade before the draft. It's not like there's a guy you're waiting for that's still on the board, in the 5th round, or you think, okay, we know he's going to last into the 6th round. I don't know why they do that, except I really think some GMs just like to make trades. And you look and you go, okay, this one's fine, and we can get a headline or whatever. Like, I don't really know what the reasoning behind that trade 3 days before the draft would be, or really 5 days before those picks come on the board. I was trying to figure that one out yesterday.
Unless it's a matter of there's certain money that you pay for draft picks, it might be to lessen the pool of money that you have to assign to draft picks. That would be the only thing that I could think of it ahead of time. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, maybe he's thinking I'm going to draft, a punter and a long snapper, and I can get those in the 7th round. So I give a 1 5th-round pick, and I can get those guys in the 6th and 7th round. Maybe it's that specific, or he knows a player he's looking at, or really feels like that player will be around later. But it's an interesting one. All right. Haven't had a chance to talk to you since the Denzel Ward signing, the extension. What do you think of the way Andrew Berry has gone about locking up the core pieces? What does it say? And he's done it in a way that it doesn't seem like there's going to be salary cap issues. Not now. If there's salary cap issues, it's going to be down the road, and the cap's going to keep getting bigger and bigger. I don't think that's going to be a huge concern for the Browns, despite the fact that they're paying Denzel a bunch of money, and Myles Garrett a bunch of money, and obviously Deshaun Watson a ton of money. I like how Andrew Berry's done with this team, right? I mean, it hasn't been perfect. You can question some of the moves, the Austin Hooper move. You can question whether Jed Wills is going to be the right guy long-term at left tackle. But I don't know if you can criticize the overall approach that Andrew Berry and Chief Strategy Officer Paul D. And that means identify talent early and young and keep it here for the long term and do it at premium positions, right? That's what you see in Myles Garrett, Deshaun Watson, Denzel Ward. You can argue that, okay, the money spent at guard, doesn't follow that premium position, but the way the Browns set up their offense, at least have set up their offense, then they treat guard as a premium position. So, I think Berry's done a good job, and Ward was a guy that you had to keep because he plays, arguably the second most important position on the field, and we could have that argument, and he's played it really well. And if you don't have him, then your secondary drops significantly, right? If you're moving guys out of position, where now you have a really deep secondary led by, a top, 3 or 5 corner in the league. And, we mentioned the moves that you made. Not all free agent moves or all draft picks are going to hit. So, yes, there have been slip-ups, but I'm with you. You understand the thought process behind building out this roster, which you couldn't always say in years past. No, I think that's a great point. And even like the couple picks I mentioned, I understood why they went and got Austin Hooper, right? Kevin Stefanski's a new coach and uses tight ends a bunch, and Austin Hooper is probably the best one available. So that made sense to go get him, and then obviously they cut their losses after this year. Almost the same thing with Jed Wills. They needed a left tackle. Now maybe they picked the wrong left tackle, but you can understand why, and I'm not ruling out Jed Wills getting better. I'm just saying through 2 years, it's a question mark to me still. But you understand why the move was made. And that is a departure from other regimes who you could literally question, why would they do that? All right, before I let you go, Amari Cooper in town for voluntary workouts. Deshaun Watson in town for voluntary workouts. A number of the veterans felt it important to be in Berea for the not even OTAs, they're voluntary workouts. What do you think that says? How big of an advantage do you think that is moving forward this year, and how different? It's different than in years past.
Yeah, I mean, I think individually it's important. You know, Deshaun Watson is making a commitment, which he needs to after that trade and that contract and everything he is dealing with. I think it was really important for him to be in Berea. I think it's a good message from Amari Cooper. It fits who he is personality-wise. You know, and you can contrast it, whether it's fair or not. It's easy to contrast with Odell Beckham Jr. When he first got traded here. He did not show up right away for the offseason program. So I think individually it's important. You know, from a team standpoint, it's meetings and it's strength and conditioning. You know, last year there was still COVID, and the Players Association wanted guys to skip, so a lot of Browns players did. But I don't know how different this is than, 5 years ago, but it's nice to see your biggest, highest paid guys in the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to see, things returning somewhat to normal as you get ready for the draft and then OTAs and then minicamp. Scott Petrak, as always, man, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Scott Petrak, make sure you read him. Browns beat reporter, Elyria Chronicle Telegram. You can also read him online, brownzone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break. And Ashley Bastock from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer joins us. We will talk some draft and prospect news straight ahead with Ashley Bastock. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Browns coverage.
Just was watching your show today, and I have to say, when it comes to the Cleveland reports about the Browns, Mary Kay is the truth. If you don't pay attention to what Mary Kay says, and you're not really following the Browns, because she has seemed to be on it when she talks about anything from the Browns. She wrote the story during the season last year, towards the end of the year, about they could go in a different direction, and she caught flack for that. And here we are, a new quarterback. So I just want to say Mary Kay is the truth, and I pay attention when she speaks on Cleveland. You better pay attention because she knows what she's talking about. Go Browns.
All right, let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, one of the colleagues, Mary Kay Cabot, for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. And Mary Kay won't take a victory lap, but we'll give her one. Baker Mayfield bounced back at her on Twitter, and she had it right, as usual.
Yeah, Mary Kay won't take one. She is way too classy for that. She just goes about her business and does her work. But, I'm going to take a minor one for her because obviously Mary Kay Cabot is one of the reasons I wanted to come and work at cleveland.com. I mean, when you talk about a true master of her profession, that is Mary Kay. And as this caller said, he nailed it on the head, right? She had that report in January that one possibility would be if Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski didn't see eye to eye, that maybe Baker Mayfield would want to trade. And as we know, Baker Mayfield tweeted, Mary Kay got some flack for that and handled it with all the grace she could. And then what happens? The Browns go and meet with Deshaun Watson. They're told they're out of the running at first. And then Baker Mayfield comes to them and says, I actually would like a trade. So it played out exactly like Mary Kay predicted it might. She also called the Amari Cooper trade about 4 or 5 days before it happened, if you were reading her columns back then. So 100% agree with this caller. This might be the best voicemail I've ever gotten to interact with on this show so far.
All right. You did a mock draft. So one of the guys that you had is a guy that's listed as a tackle, can play some edge. Let's take a look at the guy you think the Browns may take at 44, your mock draft. It is Logan Hall, plays defensive tackle or is listed as a tackle from Houston. What do you like about Logan Hall? And talk a little bit about him, and we'll let this play as you talk.
Yeah, so if you can believe it, my mind has kind of already changed, but I do still like this pick if the Browns stay at 44. And I've kind of gotten on the train that I hope I see them trade up in the second round. If that's the case, I would like to see them go receiver. But if they stay at 44 and Logan Hall is there, what's so nice about him is he is very versatile. He's not a traditional run stopper defensive tackle. Like some people are mocking Travis Jones from Connecticut to the Browns. And like my colleague Dan Labby says, if they're going that way, I think this defense starts to look a little more different, more of a 3-4 front if they go that route. But Logan Hall offers some versatility. He can move around the line. So that's why I like that pick at 44. But in my last mock draft, that's going to be going up in a couple of days, I actually do have them trading up out of that 44 spot into spot number 37 and maybe trying to go after George Pickens or some of these other wide receivers who we know could potentially be first-round talent and fall to those early second-round picks.
All right, another guy that you had in the mock draft, Josh Paschal, edge rusher for Kentucky. What do you like about him? What are your thoughts with Paschal?
What is not to like about Josh Paschal has kind of been my philosophy. The more and more I read about him and see about him, number one, I think he really just would fit into this Browns culture. When we were at the Combine and talking to him, he's a guy who really, really gets obsessive about his game prep. He told a story, I believe, in the 2020 season about seeing a play that Ole Miss was running, and he turned to his teammates and said, I'm going to intercept that on Saturday. And he did. And he ran it back for like 72 or 76 yards, something like that. So the way he talked about game prep reminded me almost of like a JOK. And then we know the Browns like that. Like they told all these stories about Anthony Schwartz kind of similarly last year. And that was a big draw for them. I think he has some room to grow. He's a little raw, maybe. He's not the best pass rusher, the most explosive pass rusher in this draft. But you look at his combine numbers, he put up some pretty solid numbers given his size, and he is good against the run, which for me, when we talk about the role Jadeveon Clowney did, that's what he's so good at, right? So I just think overall for him, he's been a guy who has consistently popped up in my mock drafts. I think he's going to be a steal for whoever gets him, and he might not even be around this long, quite honestly, because of that.
And then at 99, so that pick, the compensatory pick, you had Calvin Austin again, a wide receiver. What do you like about him, and how would he fit with the Browns, you think?
Well, I think he's one of those guys who's never going to have a traditional role exactly given his size, right? He's just a smidge under 5'8", but I do think he's really good. And when we saw him at the Senior Bowl, he talked to Mary Kay Cabot, to bring up Mary Kay again. And, his outlook is that he knows how to use his size, right? Because he's always been this size. So I don't think it would necessarily be like a traditional role for him. I do think, obviously, there's some risk involved given his size, but since you have Jakeem Grant, who maybe has a bit of a similar skill set, that might mean the Browns aren't interested, but it also might mean that pick becomes less risky if they do want to go with a wide receiver later and stack up defensive line early, if that's where they feel like they can get the most bang for their buck, so to speak.
All right, let's take a hypothetical, and I know you wrote an article on this. Say David Njoku, who tore his Achilles at his pro day, is there at 44. Your thoughts on the Browns potentially taking him?
I wanted to write about it because I think it's such an interesting conundrum, right? Like, this was a guy who was going to be, I think, universally viewed as a top 15, maybe even a top 10 pick before that injury at Michigan's pro day. Now, according to initial reports, he could be out anywhere between 6 and 9 months. That means he could, maybe potentially not get back to doing football stuff until December. That's a long time, but he does obviously have that first round talent. So I'm just kind of curious if in this situation, if the Browns would consider taking him. For me, it becomes more enticing if they are able to get Jadeveon Clowney back, and then you're not necessarily relying on a David Ojabo right away. I also think that's interesting because he's only played football for about 5 years. He discovered it when he was a junior in high school. He was born in Nigeria. He spent a large portion of his childhood in Scotland before he came over to New Jersey to attend high school. And he discovered football as a junior in high school and then made it to Michigan. He only played 26 defensive snaps at Michigan in his first 2 years and really blossomed this year. I think there are some questions about his game, like if he can really be effective against the run, if he can handle defenses throwing more attention at him, because he didn't have to worry about that playing alongside a potential number 1 pick in Aiden Hutchinson. But overall, just a really, really solid athlete, I think, who has a ceiling that we can't even begin to comprehend, which is why I think it's such an interesting question if he falls that far. For me personally, I think the risks might be a bit too high and the Browns could afford. I think I would rather see them trade up and get a receiver that they really like and get that help now. And then, we saw Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett on social media this weekend. Looked like there was some lobbying going on. Looked like, Jadeveon might want to be back here. And then your situation at edge gets more deep. You have some more room to play. But the Ojabo question for me is very, very interesting going into this weekend and seeing how far he falls and where he lands.
Yeah, and again, top 10, top 15 talent. You got to weigh that without question.
Yeah.
Ashley Bastock.
It's hard to pass it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you can get top 10 talent at 44, that goes a long way. Ashley Bastock now going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention briefly to Baker Mayfield. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock from The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Our Baker Mayfield supporter, Mr. Sooner, has some more Baker Mayfield talk.
Mr. Dave Bacon, you know who this is. I'm your buddy, Mr. Sooner Mayfield. Just a little FYI, today was such a special day. 75,360 people were at OU Stadium to honor Baker Mayfield and the unveiling of his Heisman statue. Now, there was a lot of information going around today. One of the things was new coach Brent Venables said this will be the 128th team that OU has put on the field. Now, if you take that, and there's regularly about 100 people probably on the team, sometimes a little more or a little less, that's 12,800 people that's played for OU. And you know who was voted number one of all of them? Baker Mayfield. And I will say this, I'll be the first one to tell you, it's going to be like Drew Brees. Drew Brees left the San Diego Chargers that had LaDainian Thomas, and they wanted to run the ball more. and they kind of hampered Drew Brees. They put him in lowly Saints who hadn't done squat in a long, long time, and he becomes a Pro Bowler, and he becomes a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying right now, the Browns are going to lose out because Baker Mayfield is a winner. And when Baker is made to challenge, he rises to it every time.
Ashley Bostock, I think Baker Mayfield is a competent NFL quarterback. I wouldn't say he's the next Drew Brees.
Yeah.
That's
fair.
Okay.
It's a lofty comparison. And, when even before we were like in the middle of the season and we were talking about, if they would go another route, like there is that risk that Baker could maybe be the Drew Brees for somebody else. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about going out and getting your guy. If the Browns have decided that Baker Mayfield is not their guy and Baker Mayfield no longer wants to be here, maybe they win a Super Bowl the other way. There's not much you can do in this situation. And I will say, no one, I think, is debating what Baker Mayfield means to Oklahoma, what he meant to college football, the fact that he tried to bring some of that personality to Cleveland, and how much that personality did play a part in the culture shift here. I just think at the end of the day, people maybe thought in Baker Mayfield, there would be a franchise quarterback when maybe he's just the transitional quarterback. And that's okay too. And I think, in some instances, I haven't been the easiest on Baker these last few months, but I do think the pendulum has maybe, and we've talked about this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, that the pendulum has maybe swung the other way on Baker, and maybe that the criticism is getting to be a bit too much, but because he does deserve some credit in all of this. But I don't think the Browns can say, oh yeah, here's your extension automatically because you did those things. Thank you. Here's your extension. And we're a little worried about you becoming the next Drew Brees. That's just not realistic. And that's not how the NFL works, especially when you have a chance at a top 5 quarterback in the league.
And certainly I hope Baker Mayfield goes and does what he can possibly do and becomes a good NFL quarterback. Again, we'll see. So I don't mean to, and I had this question prepared for you before I found out you're coming out with another mock draft. Who do you think the Browns would trade up for if they happen to slide into that second round? Who are some guys, just some names?
I think it's one of these receivers that they maybe have really fallen in love with. And this is the first draft that in a few years, I think, that feels really unsure. So who's to say who exactly that might be? But for me in that group, it includes like a George Pickens, a Jahan Dotson, a Treylon Burks even, if he falls out of the first round. And we know he came here for one of his top 30 visits. So that's certainly an option. A Sky Moore. That quartet for me I would be okay with any of those. And I think they will actually have to trade up to get those guys. I think there's a very realistic chance if they sit at 44 that all of those guys might be gone, given the teams that have multiple picks in front of them, given the teams that need receivers. So when I was kind of playing around with mock draft simulators, the Texans have 3 picks before the Browns pick at 44. Why not do business with them again and jump up into the 30s and get one of your guys at receiver who you think has maybe some first round talent?
The other thing is, how important do you think it is to get a young wide receiver? You have Amari Cooper. I mean, there's Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I think the Browns view as upside. But you're getting guys that are a little bit older. Jakeem Grant has been in the league a number of years. Do you think it's important for them to get a young guy that they feel they can develop?
I do. And, we talk about a lot too. You look at the way the market is going for these receivers and in free agency, what happens? Like the Browns are really lucky to get Amari Cooper at the price tag they got him, right? So we know that Andrew Berry in this front office, when it comes to managing cap and doing those things, how valuable these rookie deals are to them. So I think that's number one. Number two, just having the luxury of molding somebody to fit into your offense. And this is the only way of NFL life that they know. You maybe don't have to worry about, oh, why am I not getting certain touches here and questions like that arise, because receivers are obviously a mercurial position group. I think we all know that. We saw that play out with the Odell Beckham Jr. saga here this year. So I do think there's a lot. It is super important to develop your own wide receiver. And my colleague Doug Maurice actually wrote a whole story. Some of these top receivers in the league, most of them have been developed by the club they are currently with.
Ashley Bostock from The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Ashley, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, Ashley Bastock, make sure you read her, Pages of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Schedule a guest, G. Bush, host of The Barbershop, from 8 until noon on Saturdays on 92.3 The Fan, and Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. That's tomorrow, 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.